Hello people of the web and YouTube, Didbig and today I'm going to be teaching you how to make mesh clothing for a mesh fitted avatar for Second Life. Now guys, to actually make mesh clothing for your character in Second Life, there are a few programs as well as files that will be needed to do so. Now for the sake of today's video, I'm going to be making some mesh clothing here for the Avatar 2.0 well mesh body. For those of you wondering, this is a paid for mesh body you can get in the marketplace, but if you go over to the developer's website, they provide a .blend file, which has all the body types, well, in one file on different layers. We're gonna need this file, or just an object file, or any kind of DAE file to use it later in Marvolous Designer. So even though this video may be for, well, Avatar 2.0 mesh bodies, you could take what you learned today and basically apply it for any kind of mesh body you want to in Second Life. So yeah, like I said, I'm going to take my Avatar 2.0 body, export it as I believe I did this as an object. I don't really remember, it's been a while, but you basically want to export it as an object, FBX file, or a DAE file, it's up to you. Now when you got the file basically exported, we can open up Marvolous Designer 2. And oh yeah, before I actually continue on, I want to state that I'm using Blender 2.72. That is pretty important in regards for today's video because this version of Blender I just know plays really nicely overall with my Marvolous Designer and other programs. But yeah, back onto Marvolous Designer. As you can see, I've already got a model loaded up here and a shirt pre-made. I did this to save time. However, we will be tweaking this shirt somewhat because this is an older save that I've done, and this shirt is not perfect by any means. But yeah, with that said, we want to load in our avatar model. To do that, we can go up to File, Import, and basically import our model, or when we open up a new file, it should ask us to load in a model file. We just want to load in that model file that we exported into Marvolous Designer, and basically once we got that done, we can start making clothing for our, well, character. Now to make clothing in this program, it's fairly simple. As you can see, I just made two halves of a shirt. You can just make one pattern and flip it over and copy it. And that's how you make the back of the shirt. As you can see, I've already have a shirt pre-made. I'm actually gonna freeze this one up. That way we don't mess it up. And we're gonna make a bracelet just for sake of, well, time. To do so, to make any kind of clothing in this program, it's fairly simple. I'm just gonna zoom in here towards his wrist because we're making a bracelet. You can do that just by using your mouse wheel and the mouse click to move around. And from here, we just want to go up to pattern again, and then we want to hit either one of these few tools. I'm going to hit create rectangle, but if you were doing a shirt, you want to use the polygon tool, obviously. But since we're not going to be making a shirt right now, we're just going to be making a simple bracelet. I'm going to go back to the rectangle option. So yeah, once we got the rectangle tool selected, I'm just going to draw a basic rectangular-like shape that may be actually too big. And now I'm going to click on this little edit pattern button. And the moment you do that, that's the moment when this should turn on the sync button, which will match up what we're doing over here with what's going on over here. But don't worry, if you move this around here, you should notice this pattern does not move. That is the way this program is intended to work, so don't freak out. To actually move the pattern around, that bit of clothing that we made, we can just use these arrows here and move it around wherever we want. And let's say we get it in position and we accidentally, here, let me get this a little bit closer. Okay, let's say we accidentally build or run the simulation before we finish building our bracelet. What would happen? Well, gravity would take hold and our fabric would fall to the ground. Just like in real life if you tried to put something on it without stitching it together first. So to actually fix this, if it does fall to the ground, you can hit Control F or right click the pattern and hit rearrange pattern, which will move it back into position where we had it originally. So as you can see, I only got one half of this pattern. I want two. We're gonna right click over here, hit copy, and basically paste it right next to the other one. And as you can see, it does and doesn't really do that over here. It's not 100% mirrored, it's a little bit further out. We want to just, we want to click on it, move it behind the original piece on the opposite side of the arm. And as you can see, you think this would be perfect, that we could just stitch this thing together and be done with it. But with this program, we actually have to flip the pattern horizontally. This is actually important too with shirts, so you want to hit flip, and as you can see, the pattern texture or color changes, indicating that we got it flipped around. Now what would happen here is if we didn't flip this around, one side of the shirt would be transparent and the other side would not. We want it flipped so both sides are visible. Anyway, now that we got our pattern flipped, it's time to stitch. I'm just gonna grab the segment sewing tool, select one top of our bracelet, the other top of our bracelet, and those two pieces are now connected. If I were to hit play here, they would smack together and this would just be hanging on the side of our arm. So let's just demonstrate that now before I continue. As you can see, the clothing is just hanging there. It's not really a bracelet, so let's make it a bracelet. Let's right click the pattern, rearrange pattern to put those back the way they originally were. And let's finish up our sewing by going to the segment sewing tool, select the bottom and the bottom. And also, when you're doing this, you want to be careful because you can make twisted patterns, which is good for clothing that has really intricate shapes. However, if you just want to make a simple shirt, you do not want to have them lines cross. It's a little bit hard to see because it's in purple, but those lines, you want them to be straight, just like that, especially if you're making a shirt. But just for theoretical reasons, I'm going to show you guys what happens if we cross the lines and render the simulation. As you can see, it kind of makes a little twisted knot, which could be good for some clothing, but that's not what we want here. So I'm going to turn off the simulation and rearrange the patterns back. Actually, I'm just going to hit Control Z and undo that stitch entirely. And as you can see, the stitch is gone. Now I'm going to actually stitch this together right properly, just like that. And we're going to run the simulation again. As you can see, we got ourselves a perfect little bracelet here. However, it is a bit too big. To actually fix this, it's fairly simple. We can go back to our edit pattern tools, select these two patterns, and you can play around with the elasticity option if you want. I like to turn it on just because it makes it look a little bit more bracelet-like when we shrink this down. So I'm going to turn the elastic option on and zoom in here onto our pattern. As you can see, we're still playing the simulation, so whatever changes we do here on our pattern should be changed over here. So we're going to grab this, move it up. As you can see, our bracelet gets a little bit tighter. We're going to do that on both sides, just so it's a little bit uniform. As you can see, we got ourselves a tight-fitting bracelet, but let's say we don't want it so close to our skin on our avatar. We can actually add a offset. This can be done with the shirts too. What I like to do is I like to go down to the avatar settings and set the skin offset for, let's say 5. I like to do this with the shirts, especially if you want to have somewhat of an offset, especially if you want to make pants later on. So what I like to do is I like to set a skin offset of 5, and when I go around making my pants, I'll set the skin offset for something like 3 or 2. That way, when you make the pants, it's definitely underneath, and you can even change the layering for clothing in this program. However, it's better just to offset, because when you bring it on the Blender later on to rig it, it's better to see what's going to happen versus just seeing what happens here, because it's going to be 2 different kind of simulations when you move them around. So I like to just do offsets instead of layering. I know it's not the correct way, but it's what works for me. And yeah, as you can see, we made ourselves a basic bracelet. We can color this too if we want in here, but it's really not necessary because we already got our UV maps made. As you can see, if I were to, well, save this object here, this pattern right here would be saved. And if we were to take this pattern into Photoshop, we can paint it whatever way we want. Now, I know that sounds a little bit confusing right now. I will demonstrate it later on. So yeah, for now, we're going to export our bracelet into, well, Blender. Actually, I'm feeling a little bit adventurous. We're gonna export everything. I have a shirt here, and I'll demonstrate how this shirt was made really quick. I'm not really gonna make a perfect shirt, but you can make clothing really simple with just the polygon tool. You can just draw half your shirt here, and pretty much hold shift, go straight down, and hold shift to get perfect lines. Go around, go around, go around, go around. Just like that. As you can see, we have one side of our shirt, and I had the simulation turned on. You want to make sure your simulation's off when you're doing that, because now I have to reposition over here, which is not fun, but it's what it is. As you can see, we got one half of our shirt, and we can get the other half simply. We don't have to recreate this whole pattern. We can just right click the middle line, since we held shift and made this perfectly straight, and we can hit unfold. As you can see, that's how you can make shirts really simple. And just like we did with the bracelet before, we can duplicate this layer, copy, and then paste it over here, and we got a perfect copy. But like I said before, same thing with the bracelet. We have to flip the pattern by hitting flip horizontally, and then we can put it behind ourselves and then get right to stitching. Anyway, that's a simple rundown for how this shirt was made. All I did was basically that, and then I stitched it together, and then ran the simulation. Anyway, I would have felt bad if I didn't explain how the shirt was made, but that's how the shirt was made, so we're going to continue on with the rest of this video. So alright, we got a shirt here, we got a bracelet. I'm just going to hit File, Export, OBJ. Now this will ask you where you want to save your file. I'm just going to save it here in my Marvolous designer folder, I suppose. I'm gonna call it shirt bracelet video. And when we hit save, it will come up with this prompt. We basically want to select remove collapse clot triangles, unify UV coordinates, and uncheck avatar shape. And then we want to click in meters. That should make this fit perfectly for our Avatar 2.0 model. But before I continue, I know some of you guys or gals will probably notice this. This video might seem a little bit familiar. I'm following the mighty Gecko's guide for how to make Avatar 2.0 clothing. However, I'm going to be putting a spin on it later on once we get into Blender, because I'm going to be modifying the shape, and then I'm also going to be painting the clothing in Mudbox, which is a whole other different thing compared to the original video. I just want to point that out. The first few steps are exactly the same to her video. However, from here on out, things are going to get a little bit more complicated, maybe a little bit more difficult, but I will try to simplify it as much as I can. So yeah, as you can see, these are my options. You want to make sure you uncheck the avatar shape, put it in meters, select these two boxes, and hit OK. Now once we did that, we can actually export it, or import it I should say, into, well, Blender. As you can see, I got my blend file open, which I got from the creators of the Avatar 2.0 model. You can get it from their website. And basically we want to go down to import object. Now as you can see, I got my shirt bracelet video object file here. We're just going to click import. And you're gonna be like, whoa, where did the shirt go? Well, it's there, it's just out of frame. To fix this and to get it more center, we can actually click object right away, go under to transform, and then go to geometry to origin. This will help us out greatly, and another thing that will help you out in Blender, I should say, is you want to turn on this button here. I think it's for scaled, using 3D manipulator widget. You just want to turn on the 3D manipulator widget, which will give us our standard arrows. It makes it a lot easier for moving the mesh around and getting it perfectly fit with our model. As you can see, I'm just trying to line our mesh up right now for the time being. And it might take me a minute, so give me a second here, guys. So yeah, as you can see, our clothing is now on our model, but we're not quite done yet. We can take it a step farther, or we can leave it as is. In most cases, you could leave it as is, and when it comes to UV painting later on, you'll have a little bit less errors with it. However, I'm gonna actually modify our shirt and our bracelet object. To do this, I can just click on the shirt pattern, because for whatever reason it unclicked it. You want to make sure your shirt pattern or your bracelet is selected. Go under here, and if you're using the blender that I left in the description, our windows should be exactly the same. Just go down here, click on the little wrench, and we basically want to add a modifier to this shape. Now the modifier I'm going to be adding is a solidify. Now for those of you wondering why I chose a solidify modifier, well, it's to offset the clothing and to give it a bit of a thicker look. However, we're not quite done yet. We want to go under here into our solidified settings, and in my case, I'm going to boost the offset just a little bit more. Just because I like to do that mainly for pants. If I make pants later on, it makes it a lot easier to make our pants, because then we can just leave the offset off for our pants. And with most of these mesh avatars here, you got alpha layers, so you can actually just hide your legs entirely in Second Life, and your pants will sit nicely underneath the shirt without any issues at all. So I like to just put an offset on the shirt, no offset on the pants basically. But we're not quite done. We just offsetted our clothes, but we didn't do it in the wisest way possible. So I'm going to go down here, scroll down even more in the solidify options, and we're going to click on only the rim. Now what this will do is it'll make everything kind of, I don't know how to word it, where it's just the rim that gets thick here, but everything inside the shirt is not thick. It's a little bit harder to see in this particular shirt model. But yeah, there you go. As you can see, it's just a sheer angle, and everything else inside there is just flat. I like doing it this way because when you do it, it kind of hides everything underneath the clothing, and you can actually increase the seam so that this seam goes into your avatar's body. But with my Avatar 2.0 mesh, I'm not really going to go into showing you guys how to do that, because it's not really necessary for all the avatar models. Maybe if you're using a base Linden Labs original Second Life avatar, you would want to hide some of the mesh into the avatar mesh. That way you don't see things you shouldn't see. But yeah, this looks pretty good to me so far besides this corner. So I'm going to quickly go and explain how you would fix this corner if this would be bothering you. So as is, you could probably rig this and be done with it, but I'm going to make some changes because let's say Marvolous Designer isn't 100% perfect. Sometimes you might not notice something right away, like this shirt corner here. Looks pretty good to me here, right? But once you make it solidified and you put that offset on, but yeah, basically once you put that offset on and solidify it, it will bring out kind of the ugly corners and things that you maybe missed in Marvolous Designer. So I'm going to be showing you guys how to fix that. That's fairly simple to do too. You just want to select the clothing in this case, go and change it from object mode to sculpt mode. Now this tool should have a tool already selected if you're using the Blender version that I'm using. I'll link it down below. And we can basically just change the strength and the radius to whatever we wish. And mirroring mode should automatically be on by default. So when we click here, we'll smooth this out, and it will smooth this side out too. This would be useful if the clothing was indeed mirror flipped. In this case here, as you can see, I didn't mirror flip our shapes, or if I did, I tweaked the points a bit. So this is lower than over there. Which, again, you really don't want to do that if you're putting it into Blender, but it's easily fixable, so I tend not to worry about it. But yeah, as you can see, that looks way better. I just did that simple little sculpt there, and it's fixed. Maybe a little bit wrong yet. But I'm happy with that. Once we texture it, you're not going to notice. Anyway, we just want to go around, make sure we got everything the way we want it before we go and start rigging this to our avatar. Because after we rigged it to our avatar, I'm going to export the clothing here separately so that we can modify the textures in Mudbox. And before you ask, because of the fact that we put an offset on this, as well as sculpted it, our UV image set from Marvolous Designer here may have changed it a little bit, but overall you can fill in the gaps and it will work decently. But if you don't want to deal with that, like I said, you could just take the clothing straight from this, put it into Blender, don't even do the offset or any of that, just weight paint it and rig it and be done. But we're going to be going the extra step here of fixing some of these issues with our avatar and then saving the model and painting it. There we go, something like that. That looks a little bit better there to me. I'm gonna actually say that's pretty decent. I'm gonna actually start to wrap up this model, and we're gonna get into the hard part, which is rigging it. And it's not really hard to rig it, but as you can see, I'm on the wrong layer. You may have been following along and you may have been on this layer, which does have our bones on. In this case, with this particular model, that's what they decided to do, was only put rigging on the one layer and not on all the layers. I wish they would have put it on all the layers, but that's just what they decided to do. It's not too much of a hassle. All we gotta do is select our clothing, push M, which will tell us to move it to the layer. I'm gonna move it to layer 1. I'm gonna move it to layer 1. Now when we go back to layer 1, it's on our model, and I know this avatar shirt isn't meant for the big boob avatar here, so clearly they clip. But that's not an issue because this model is basically the same. It's just on the first layer. We're just doing this for rigging purposes. But yeah, we just want to then select our shirt, select our bone. We can click on the shirt here, right click on this after holding shift, select both the shirt and our bones, and when we hit Control P, we can then select, let me do that again, Control P, we can then select with automatic weights. Now this will automatically basically rig our clothing to our avatar. Now when it comes to shirts, this does a pretty decent job, especially with bracelets. Like, that's actually surprised me that that bracelet came out that good. But yeah, it basically already rigged our clothing to our model, and it's not 100% accurate, as you can see. Here, let me move this. We got a bit of an issue here, but it's nothing to worry about. As long as your leg doesn't clip through at this spot, you're fine, because you can actually put on an alpha and hide that, and that will look perfectly fine. But when it comes to the pants, there's an extra step you want to do. I'm just going to do it here on the shirt, just to explain it a bit better. If your pants don't rig right, let's say when you move your leg, it's clipping through weird and all this other stuff, it's not going the way you want it, you will have to do something with the weights. And to do that, you can just select the mesh avatar, select the mesh shirt, and it will glow orange like this. And when I say select, you just want to, let me deselect, you just want to right click your avatar, hold shift, right click your shirt, and it will go orange. Now from here we can go from object mode down here in the bottom to weight paint, and our shirt should glow blue like this, showing that we did it right. But what I'm saying is your pants should do this. If your pants don't rig right and you get them blue like this, you're doing good. The next step is to scroll down and hit transfer weights. Now this will do a bit more of an accurate job when it comes to rigging our clothing. As you can see, it even fixed our shirt a little bit. But generally, I don't like to do the transfer weight option to the shirt, because you kind of want the shirt to hang. When your shirt's doing unnatural stuff like this, it looks a little bit odd to me. But yeah, you can do that if you want. If you like that look better, then all good for you, I guess. And as you can see, it even fixed our arms just a little bit better. I don't know about the bracelet. Yeah, the bracelet even fits a bit better when you do it that way. So it's up to you whether you want to apply that to well, all your clothing or just your pants. But in most cases, I just like to do that to my pants and call it a day. Anyway, we're done with that. We got our clothing rigged. I'm gonna actually quickly export our rigged clothing as well as a standard object file for this clothing to a folder real quick. So to do that, we want to hit File. Once our clothes are selected, make sure our clothing is selected. Click File, Export Calydia DAE file. Now this will tell you where do you want to save it, and it will have some options here on the left towards the bottom of the screen. You want to change the Export Calydia options from Operator Preset to SL OpenSim Rigged. Now that will apply some modifiers and only export the selected item. In our case, we got our clothing selected, so that's what's going to get exported. Anyway, I'm going to create a folder because things are going to get a little bit busy here. I'm going to call it Tutorial Clothes. That's close enough. If I spelled it wrong, it's whatevs. I'm going to open the folder. I'm going to rename this file. I'm going to call it Shirt Bracelet Tutorial. And now I'm going to hit Export Calydia. And that is done. Our rigged clothing is done. But as you guys could probably tell, it's not painted. It's not refined. We can actually refine it even further now in Marvolous Designer, Mudbox if we want. But yeah, I want to export a basic object file because we don't need it rigged for Mudbox. So we're going to select the clothing again and we're going to export again, but this time I'm going to export as an object file. Hopefully we got our clothing still selected though. I'm going to open up that folder we had, Tutorial Clothes, and I'm going to call this one Paint Me. And I'm going to make sure it's on selection only here in the operator presets. That way we only export the clothing that we got selected and not the whole model. Anyway, from here we can actually go into Mudbox now and open up our file. So okay, I actually got the folder opened here. Sorry about that, it took me a minute, and it looks like that's kind of cool. I didn't know that you can get the texture from Marvolous Designer like that. I haven't messed with that feature, but it looks like the texture that you put in here can actually go over into the final model if you want it to. But we're not going to do that. We're actually going to paint this thing. So I'm going to take that file that we made, the Paint Me file, move it into Autobox or Autodesk Mudbox, and it's going to tell us there's an incomplete UV set. That's because we modified the mesh from the original mesh file that Marvolous Designer made. And I'm just going to hit Keep Mesh, and that should be fine. As you can see, it imports good, and if I were to click on this model right now with the paintbrush selected, it will ask us to make a paint layer. And everything will look like it's working fine. See, I'm painting it, and later on you're going to see there's some little error spots or blank spots that don't actually get painted in. We can fix that later on with Photoshop, so don't worry about it right now. And for the most part, if you paint it like this, and then save the picture or texture file, you're not going to really see it in SecondLife in the end result. You will only notice it if you zoom in super close to the model that there's something wrong. But overall, I'm going to actually do this thing right. I'm going to paint as much of it as I can a single color, and then we're going to drag over the texture file into Photoshop. Now, to make things easier, you can actually paint this whole thing here and just fix it up later in Photoshop. But I'm going to paint the whole thing a single color and paint it individually in Photoshop. Kind of like mesh, when you bake a texture and do it in real time, it's kind of like the same thing, but I'm just doing it in Photoshop. I'm going to just paint this whole thing black, because when we get the errors later on, I think they're all going to show up as white, and we can fill those in later in Photoshop. So yeah, I got my clothing, it's all painted. I'm going to quickly just go over here to the Layers section in Mudbox, right click, and then we can hit Export Selected. And when it asks us to save the file, I'm just going to save it in my Tutorial Clothing folder with the finished rigged model, because this is the texture that's eventually going to go on our finished rigged model. So I'm going to hit Save, and if I go back into our folder, you're going to notice that file that I made there is right here. And our UV sets, oh god, forgot the image viewer does that. I'm just going to have to zoom in on editing here, or I'll just open it in Photoshop. Give me a second. So here it is, it's opening up. As you can see, it's our UV set image, the same one from Marvolous Designer. If I zoom out here, you're gonna notice that's our UV set. I should have actually had these a lot closer to here, but oh well. As you can see now, we got a basis of what we can paint, and we can fix the little errors that formed in this texture. Now, if you were to not modify the file in Blender and add the Solidify and such, you wouldn't have to scour over your texture here for errors. However, it looks like this one turned out okay. I'll have an example on screen of one that ain't formed right. Sometimes it forms and it's not. There'll be like little specks in the image. You can easily paint them out and that will fix it. Or you can post a picture over top of it if you're going for something like a design on the shirt and you're not going to notice it. But yeah, this one actually looks pretty good overall. Besides the fact that it's transparent, that's probably a pretty good UV set in my opinion. So yeah, what I'm going to quickly do is I'm going to get the magic wand out, select the blank gray space here, select inverse, and we're going to quickly paint this. I'm thinking we'll do it gray and then I'll throw a picture on top. So I'm going to get a brush out and we're going to paint this thing. And we're going to paint it a solid color so that it's not transparent later on. And I think the transparency had something to do with the way I painted in Mudbox. That shouldn't happen to you if you painted everything in Mudbox. The transparency should be fine. But yeah, I'm going to see if that's good. That looks like it might be it for me. Gonna see if any of them errors show up now that we got a different color though. But yeah, overall that looks fine. It could be just my monitor hiding everything, but I don't see nothing wrong with this UV set, so this should work. But I don't want just a gray shirt. I'm gonna actually go back to Magic Wand. I'm gonna make a gold bracelet and I'm gonna put a picture on our shirt before we go and save this. What will be our final texture, and we're basically done with the mesh model and our texture. Well, that's kind of an ugly gold, but that should do. And yeah, guys, since I can't help it, I'm gonna make the shirts look like this. That can be done simply just by using the clipping mask. You can just put the picture over top our pattern, hit clipping mask, and the shirt's done. However, this isn't perfect. If your UV set here had an issue, you're really gonna notice it once the picture gets clipped on top. You gotta paint over it first on layer 0 before you can apply a picture. But since mine didn't have any issues, it just applied good. But before I go, I'm gonna actually do one more thing. I'm gonna make it look a little bit more like a shirt. I'm gonna paint on a a collar, so it looks a bit more like a shirt. Like I said, you can actually pull shirt textures and fabric textures, slap them on top if you want it to look more decent. But if you want to go for a more cartoony look, you can just put a picture on top and it should work fine. Okay, I think that's actually gonna do pretty good for my shirt, so I'm gonna quickly go and save this. And oh yeah, when you're going to save this, it should open up the folder where the original texture is. I thought I would have to navigate back to it. But yeah, as you can see, it's going to try to save as a Photoshop file. We want to save this as a ping file, and you want to even rename it. I'm going to actually call this finished texture, so we know it's the done one. And I'm going to hit save. And I'm going to hit OK, making sure the options are that way for you should be fine. And if we go back to our tutorial clothing folder, we now have our UV sets painted, and they look like they're pretty good to me. There's no errors on them. I know I'm probably doing things wrong. I'm not the best when it comes to making mesh clothing, nor am I the best when it comes to UV sets. I'm pretty sure these are slightly wonky compared to the original ones from Marvolous, especially since we mesh edited our shirt in Blender and made it solidified. But that should be good, so I'm gonna copy all these files over and we'll put them in Second Life and see how they turned out. Now guys, that's basically it. Our model is done, it's rigged, and it's also textured. So we just want to then upload our model into Second Life. You can do this easily, and I'm going to show you how to do it in Firestorm, but the steps are the same for Second Life, the normal viewer, as well. We essentially want to go into File, upload our model, and you want to check the same boxes that I do. I believe they're under Physics, and you want to make sure the rigging is turned on. You can use the little preview window on the right to see if your rigging is right and everything. And once you determine your rigging and everything is right, you want to then hit upload. It will then calculate an $L price, which should be pretty cheap. Then you just want to hit upload again, and you can just attach it to your avatar. You can just right click the model, hit add, and as you can see, it attaches to your avatar. However, there is no texture on it, so we got to then upload our image file, which is our UV set image for our shirt. You can just go and hit file, upload image, select your image, name it whatever you want, hit upload, pay $10 if I remember, and then we can right click the clothing that we're wearing, hit edit, and you could just drag your shirt or UV image set onto your pattern of your clothing, or the texture of your clothing, or whatever the option is. You just want to drag it into texture in the SecondLife window, and it will change the texture on the mesh that we have on our avatar. As you can see, it worked. Our clothing is now in SecondLife, and we can use it, sell it, and do whatever it is we want to do with it. So guys, that's basically it for this video. Forgive me, I know this seems like a movie than a video. It was pretty long, and I didn't think it would take that long to make. I just wanted to splurge for this video. I wanted to do something I'm kind of passionate about doing, and I just wanted to show you guys some of the programs that I've been relearning again over time. So yeah, I do hope this video helped you out, and I'm gonna leave it off here. If you guys want to see anything more with SecondLife, or maybe there's something else you want me to try, maybe you want me to try some newer programs for it, maybe you want to see how you rig an avatar or something, and if you guys suggest it and it gets upvoted a lot, I will do it, or I'll try to do it. But yeah, with that said, I'm gonna leave today's video off here now. DTPK signing off. Peace. The SD card that you're going to be putting into your Wii. Now when you got your game saved on your SD card, to verify this auto bleem, extract it to the root of the flash drive, label the flash drive Sony, and make sure it's